Hello, hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the third day of our FDP program. We will start the proceedings at 3:30, so 12 minutes from now. Thank you. Hello, hi. Good afternoon. Welcome to this third session of the FDP. We will start in a couple of minutes. Thank you. I hope that the things are fine at your end. Hello, hi, welcome. So I'm going to begin the proceedings of the third day of the WebDP. I thank you very much for joining today. I would quickly recap the concepts that we have covered yesterday, and then we will start the topics to be covered today. Mainly, we will discuss today the CO and the PO attainment computation and analysis of weaker students and remedial action followed by that. and that will be the end of our 3-day FDP program. We will obviously take a few pauses between these next 1.5 hours of session to address questions, if any. I would still encourage all of you to send your questions on a Telegram group as well, so that at a convenient time, I will be able to address those questions as well later on. Let's recap. We started with the process to be adopted for designing of course outcomes, and we looked at this model to arrive at the knowledge blocks by looking at the units from the perspective of identifying what knowledge levels are they covering. The content from each unit is being looked at by us from the perspective of what knowledge dimension is covered by the units. And then we are trying to club, merge, and come out with a knowledge block if it is possible. Otherwise, you would obviously can have a list of all the knowledge blocks, independent knowledge blocks like these, and you can label them with some name, which will represent those knowledge blocks nicely. And then you will have to identify the levels of cognition at which you want the students to be evaluated. And these are the levels that we have, as an example, have identified. So this is the model that you can adopt for any course and of any faculty of education. And this is the first step for us to go ahead with uh, constructing the course outcome statements. So if you refer these model of identifying what keyword we should use in the statement of course outcome, we find this keyword at the junction point of the knowledge dimension and the cognitive process dimension, and the right one which suits our knowledge block. Each of the knowledge block we have to pick and choose from this list of action verbs like this. So we were debating whether the cognitive process dimension is suitable for identifying a action verb for metacognitive knowledge. And um, I feel that cognitive process dimension may not be directly applicable to metacognitive knowledge, and you may want to consider a parallel dimension here, which may not be hierarchically structured, but still it will give you a certain input about the keyword that you may want to use according to the metacognitive knowledge dimension that you are covering. For example, receiving, responding, valuing, organization, and internalization could be your the junction point, or rather the dimension that you want to choose. And then based on that, you may find a keyword to design your course outcome statements, which requires addressing metacognitive knowledge which is being imparted by your course. So this is the way this model has to emerge, uh, for any course. As a program designer, every course that you are covering and you are making as a part of the program has to be uh, you know kind of analyzed with the help of a model like this. May not be the same model, but any model that helps you come out with the right set of action verbs and right set of desired level of cognition and the right set of knowledge blocks. These three things are extremely important for the construction of the course outcome statements. And for generate developing the course outcome statements, these four components technique is very useful. It starts at action, followed by knowledge. Third is condition, and fourth is criteria. Out of which criteria and the condition are optional, and action and knowledge are the compulsory parts of these statements. So action is nothing but the action verb that we identified, and the knowledge part is nothing but the label that is given by you to the knowledge block. So it represents that knowledge block that you identified. So it becomes very simple for you to then come out with the right set of course outcome statements. You don't have to then worry about how many course outcome statements are have to be designed for a course. It all depends on how many blocks of the knowledge have you identified. So if you have identified two blocks here, naturally there will be two course outcome statements. If you have identified 20 knowledge blocks here, obviously there will be 20 course outcome statements for your course. It is as simple as that. So there is no confusion about how many should be there. As a, is there any rule, is there any compulsion? There is nothing like this. It is all about how you are identifying the knowledge blocks, and how, what the desired level of cognition for that, and what action verb you want to consider to as a part of the course outcome statement. Now once again, let me recall that course outcomes are should be measurable, and hence the questions are supposed to be um, mapped with these course outcomes, and that is how the there will be it will generate an ability to measure the course outcomes, because we are measuring the performance of the students as per every question that is being asked. And since every question is mapped to a course outcome, naturally we are measuring the course outcomes. That's the journey of measurement from a course to the course outcome. So we had then looked at an example here, which was of a course, that is, and this example is shared by Dr. Shikha Maheshwari, who used these concepts covered in this FDP, and then this is actually an evidence that these concepts that we are discussing are actually applicable, practical, pragmatic, and one can easily actually come out with a comprehensive document to communicate how one can actually use these techniques, these concepts, and come out with right set of questions, a rubric to measure the performance and identifying the weaker students, how to, and also designing of the course outcome statements. You can see here she also has designed the course outcome statement. So this shows you the knowledge blocks, then desired level of cognition, action verbs for these, and then finally she came out with actually the course outcome statements also easily. Here are the course outcome statements. There are total 15 here, and then these are the uh, questions that she designed based on these course outcome statements. And this is the way the rubric that could be designed to identify the weaker students. So this is actually the point is that this is actually applicable, and one can easily use this model for coming out with a set of course outcomes. We looked at various examples, and then of correctly designed and incorrectly designed course outcomes, and then we discussed this concept of how to map the course outcomes with the program outcomes. What is the logic behind it? And the idea here that was used by us to create a blueprint of the whole program, and then see whether logically we can think about mapping of course outcomes with the program outcomes with some kind of degree of affinity, like a strong, slight, medium, substantial, moderate, substantial, or high, medium, low, or 0, 1, 2, 3, whichever way you want to label that, high affinity level. it could be easily logically identified, and this blueprint may help you do that. And then we discussed the framing of the questions and assignments, for which we were discussing this idea of how progressively we take the students from fundamental knowledge to advanced level knowledge, and how slowly we our activity designs also should then address these level of advancement that is happening from first term to the last term. So when we think about some skill level activities or assignments which fall into psychomotor domain, we have to think about how systematically we move the students from simple tasks like planning design to to the higher level, higher order thinking level. And in also in the case of attitude or affective domain related activities, we can actually create design those activities such a way that we it will help us check whether students are able to take interest, are ready to volunteer, right? Likewise, other such inputs given here could be used for designing the assessment. So that will complete kind of a framework for what type of assessment should be designed when, based on the kind of advancement of the students we are doing from first term to this last term. Likewise, if we are thinking about how to distribute the questions, when it comes to simplicity and the complexity of the questions, then this model will be helpful to you if you are trying to find out what should be the right percentage of the questions belonging to the cognitive level process. How to think about what level of cognition I should measure the student performance at. And if you also come out with a kind of a simple guideline like this, it will help the question designers to come out with the right set of questions and the question banks. So this was the idea that was related to question bank designing. And then we talked about Inpods faculty commons concept, which we are promoting as a as a our contribution to the community of higher education teachers. And we are inviting educators like you to share with everyone the practices that you are adopting, the outcome based education that you are implementing, practicing, what pros and the cons are, what benefits have seen. All such aspects of outcome based education implementation can be shared by any teacher who is interested in participating in this community, can share the video or any such media with us, which can be uploaded by us on Inpods Faculty Commons channel on YouTube, and others can learn from that. The license has to be Creative Commons, which means that you are allowing others to use your work for modification as well at their end. And but you want them to continue to refer your name as the originator of the idea. So that is the kind of licensing we would like for to be used for shared content by you on our YouTube channel. So that was the conclusion of yesterday's uh, day two session of FDP. And unless there are any questions now at this point in time, I will move to the third and last session of this FDP, in which we are going to discuss um, COPO attainment, computation, and analysis. I'll wait for a couple of minutes for you to gather your thoughts, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, so I'm going to change the slide deck now, and we will now. Okay, I'm going to reshare the screen. Is it visible to all of you? All right, thank you so much for the confirmation. Let me begin the presentation now. So let's quickly take a look at the agenda of this presentation. We will discuss the parameters required for computation of attainment at the CO level, and then followed by affinity levels and attainment levels. And then we will finally discuss the PO attainment computation and analysis batch wise. This will be an interesting discussion for those who are interested to know how to compute the CO attainment and the PO attainment for any accreditation purpose like NBA or NAC. To recall the diagram here, which was representing program articulation metrics in a way, right? This is nothing but a program articulation metric, which shows you how POs and the COs are connected with each other. And also we were discussing the percentage of the questions and the level of the questions to be asked here, looking at the various knowledge dimensions covered by these groups of the courses. I'm going to pick one of those courses here, and then let's say this is a course which has got 5 COs, and this is the icon I have used for representing a course. Whenever you come across with this icon in our presentation, you would please recall this is as a course. This is a course articulation matrix, just like the way we create a program articulation matrix in which we decide how POs are mapped with the courses. In which, in this articulation matrix, we think about the course outcomes mapping with the program outcomes. So I'm using a very simple matrix which shows you that CO1 of the course has a strong affinity or substantial affinity with PO1, moderate with PO2, and slight with PO4. There is no mapping between the CO1 and CO2. Likewise, CO3, CO2, 3, 4, 5 all have exactly same level of mappings with PO1, PO2, and PO4. PO3 is not addressed by this course. This is what exactly is the interpretation of this metric. This is very simple. In reality, this metric may look like this. Uh, what I mean by that is, in reality, the CO1 may have substantial affinity and moderate affinity with PO2, but no affinity with other POs. Likewise, CO1 may have slight affinity with PO1, but moderate with PO4. CO3 has only one affinity, and that is with PO4, and that is substantial. So this could be the real picture actually, but not to complicate the things in the beginning of our discussion, I am keeping the things very simple, and that's why I'm taking these affinities as simple as this constant mapping is used. So this constant mapping is now represented by a diagram like this. So this is our course outcomes are 5, and each course outcome has substantial, moderate, and slight affinity with respectively with PO1, PO2, and PO4. So this is the representation of one diagram here of a course. So how a course level CO attainment is arrived at, right? It begins at every question level. Every question has to be mapped with a PO, CO, and then computation of the CO attainment happens, and then the data flows upwards likewise from any assignment to the course. But there is this journey is very interesting. So this is the hierarchy. So finally, before we transfer the course outcome to the PO attainment, we come out with a number that is delivered by various steps involved in the computation of CO attainment. So, as you know, the assessment tools are divided into two groups: direct tools and indirect tools. Direct ones are the exams and assignments, quizzes, labs, practicals, formative and summative assessments, right? All those are called as direct tools. And indirect tools are the surveys in which teacher doesn't grade the student responses. In direct tools, teacher grades the student responses. In indirect tools, teachers doesn't grade the responses. That's the only difference between these two uh, tools. But currently, currently the indirect tools are used for conducting surveys, such as course and surveys. But you can actually use indirect tools very powerfully and meaningfully for metacognitive type of activities. Think about it, and you may be able to actually design some indirect tools for evaluation of or getting the feedback about the metacognitive level activities. Nevertheless, the indirect tools are further divided into formative and summative assessments, and this is typically to address the requirement of affiliated colleges. But in my opinion, this is not required. All the assessments that coming under the direct tools should be treated equally and with the same level of importance. Uh, in fact, in my opinion, in the outcome-based education, formative assessments are more important than the summative assessments. However, the importance given to the formative assessment is lesser uh, because of the reasons we all know, and we don't want to discuss those publicly. So it actually defeats the purpose of define conducting the formative assessments if we are giving lesser weightage to the formative assessment. The reason is that formative assessments give you very quick feedback about the attainment that is happening, and then there is a chance for the teachers to improve the uh, students' learning outcomes by planning and conducting remedial actions. And hence, formative assessments are more important. Summative assessment, by the time you analyze, the batch is over. The students are out of the term, and then there is no time left for you to take any remedial actions on the current batch. It may be applicable, the action may be applicable to the next batch, but by that time, the damage is done for the batch which has left the bus. Rather, for which the students are out of the term, and then naturally it's too late, and so hence the formative assessments are more important in terms of outcomes based education. uh, However, this since the some of the specifications recommend that weightages for the summative have to be higher. I have given this example here, but I have come across with many examples in which of Inpods customers who use Inpods technology for outcome-based education. I have seen that increasingly the institutions are considering equal weightage to formative and summative assessments, and that is a good sign. Um, when it comes to direct and indirect tools, again the weightage is higher to direct tools compared to indirect tools. And here again the problem is that since the indirect tools are opinions shared by the students and not no evaluation done by the teacher, it is considered to be of lower weightage. But if the indirect tools are used for the purpose of surveys and not for serious kind of as activities, then naturally the in feedback received from such indirect tools will be poor, and then naturally the importance will drop, and then there will be a tendency of considering not considering the feedback coming from indirect tools. And I have seen increasingly some of the institutions giving almost zero weightage to indirect tools. But they are right in a way, because the feedback typically is spoiling the whole calculations of the attainment, and then it hides the important information being shared by the analysis, and that to avoid that, indirect tools weightage is given low. But if these indirect assessments are used for metacognitive activities, knowledge related activities, in my opinion, the importance of indirect tools will also go up in if it is done. So now, what I would like to do is, here the assessments of formative assessments, let's consider, and then let's say that the average course outcome attainment 1 is coming to 55%, which is arrived at by computing the attainment of every question from these exams, and I am averaging out it to 55% here. I'll show you how exactly this computation is done and how the average attainment of CO1 could be computed. I'll show you exactly this. Imagine that right now we have done that, and then 55% attainment is achieved. From NTEM exam, you have received 40% attainment for CO1. And then since the weightages are there, you will have to then arrive at one weighted attainment number for CO1. In this case, it comes to 46%. Now, likewise, surveys are being conducted, and the percentage of attainment is coming to 80% from the survey for CO1. Then you will have to then apply the weight once again, and then you will get weighted attainment of CO1 when you apply the weight of direct and indirect tool, which will be 54.5%, right? So this is how the attainment computation moves upwards. And finally, when this 54.5% is arrived at, this is a number that will go to PO attainment. And then further computation of PO attainment will happen when the number is out of the course box, right? So now we are going to actually dissect this particular area and go inside it and find out how exactly the this average number is computed. Later on, it is just the journey and applying the weightages here and there. What is more important is to think about how this attainment percentage is computed, and rest of the thing is just weightage application, nothing specific to that. Uh, any questions so far? Yeah, somebody has asked what is MT and CAT. It is nothing but midterm exam or continuous assessment. And please do not worry about these acronyms. Just consider those as these are the various assessments you are conducting in your as your term work. Right? So don't worry about the labels used there. You can use your own labels there and think about that. It is formative assessment, which are conducted after every month or whatever, after delivering every unit, whichever pattern that you want to follow, you're just following that. You're calling those as various exams, doesn't matter. But I'm slightly kind of getting surprised that these acronyms are not quite famous and not generally used, but that's okay. So the next is 6 steps towards CO attainment computation. Uh, these are, we will use these 6 steps, and then I will be able to show you how exactly the CO attainment is computed in in these exams coming in? How do we average out the CO attainment for every CO? So the first step is find CO mapping of each question in each assignment. Second is group the questions as per the CO. Third is apply the student performance threshold value. Fourth is compute the question wise attainment. Fifth is compute aggregated CO attainment for each CO. And last is compare the CO attainment with target. The first step is find the mappings of every questions with the CO. So I'm going to consider three exams here for our course. This is our course. These are our three exams. And, we will look into the questions asked in each exam and then try to see what mapping these questions has. So the test has four questions and the mapping is with CO1, CO2, CO1, CO2. In midterm exam, the mapping is with CO1, CO2, CO3, CO3. And in project, the mapping is with CO4, CO4, CO5, CO5. Now you would wonder what these questions are related to a project. You may want to finally ask student to uh, submit the project report, right? And then this project report is to be evaluated based on some rubric, and this rubric may have some criterias, and these criterias could be linked with program course outcomes. So that's the way these mappings are done. Now the next step is to group the questions according to the mappings of the COs. So here you will find that there are three questions belonging to CO3, three with CO2, and two each for CO3, 4, and 5. Right. So this is how the grouping of the questions needs to be done, and then we start the computation of CO attainment. So the first parameter that needs to be considered is student performance threshold. For example, 60% of maximum marks of a question. What is the difference of this threshold of 60% with the pass and fail threshold of, let's say, 35%, which this threshold of 35% is used by us to qualify or disqualify a student based on the complete term work and the exams, right? All the exams, all the term work combinedly. Some institutions may have different rules. They may want to consider the qualification and disqualification of the student even when a couple of exams have happened and then the results are showing that the student is not progressing. That could be the bar that some of the institutions use. And this concept is not very different from that. It is the same concept of threshold. It is 35% when you qualify or disqualify a student. Here in this case, it is 60%, but that is not to say that the student is qualified or disqualified. It is to say whether or not the student has achieved the outcome or not. Whether or not the student has achieved the outcome, related to the question that is being asked. So the other difference uh, here is that we are supposed to compute the CO attainment for every question, and hence this 60% threshold is applicable to the CO attainment computation of every question. So here in this graph shows you that there was a question of 2 marks, and hence the threshold value will be 1.2 marks. If I take 60% of 2, it will be 1.2. Obviously we don't grade a student's answer with such a fractional number of marks, but still this is a level, and naturally the moment the student is scores 1.5 marks, which is possible, the student will be above this line, and those who are below this line are not considered to be achieving the outcome mapped to this question, and hence they are these students are to be considered for remedial action or analysis of why the student did not score the rather the did not attain the outcome. That is the analysis to be done right here. It's not about passing or failing. It is about why they did not achieve the outcome, and then planning the remedial actions accordingly. That is the idea here. And for that idea, we are using a threshold value. Frequently asked questions about the threshold value is how to identify a threshold value. Right? Is that the question again coming here as well? Let me just check. There is a question here. Yes, exactly the same question, right? I'm addressing the same here. How to identify a threshold for a CO. And this threshold is identified, there are many institutions use various techniques, and one of the techniques that is used is look at the last 3 years performance of the students for the same course, if this course is being taught previously as well, and then it is possible for you to come out with some logical threshold value based on the performance of students in the previous academic batches. However, there could be a much more powerful and sensible way of identifying a threshold value. If this course is a completely new course, and again we were thinking about an idea of a completely new program, then in such cases, how would you identify a threshold value, right? And for that, actually, the technique that you can use is to refer the cognitive level at which the students have to be evaluated. So if you believe that this course outcome is to be evaluated at apply level of the cognitive process, then naturally, if you consider the three levels of the Bloom's taxonomy or the cognitive process level, which is remember, understand, and apply, right? This is the third level. So you can divide the students in four categories: those who could apply it, those who could understand it, those who could just remember it, and those who could not remember also. And there is a fourth category, right? And so, if you just use this logic, you can easily say that at least 50% threshold should be there, so that students who should be above crossing this are at least considered to be understanding this concept, and I mean the concept that is being evaluated there, assessed there. And in those who are in apply level, naturally that is perfect, no problem at all. But at least 50% threshold should be there when I'm thinking about a question which is being asked to evaluate whether students are achieving apply level of cognitive process. You may want to little stringent and move the bar upwards and then say that 67 65% is also fine. And but to be able to do that kind of analysis, then your grading system should allow you to come out with that kind of analysis. But there's a logic also, right? But again, I want to uh, focus your attention on the cognitive process dimension. That is very important in also deciding the threshold values. That's a more logical way of considering the threshold values than even last 3 years average. Can the threshold value different for different courses in the program? Absolutely yes. Why not? Because no two courses are same. The complexity could vary, and then students' performance will vary accordingly. And naturally, it has to be different. And then whether the threshold value should be changed every year, my answer is no, because until and unless you get enough idea about the behavior of the outcome-based education framework that you are designing, my answer to you is do not change the parameters, for at least 3 to 4 years once you define those. Uh, you can start the computation of attainment in the first year, and within the couple of assignments, you will know whether your threshold value is correct. If your threshold value is giving you attainment values like 90%, 95%, then it is wrong as a threshold value, because it is too low, and that is why most of the students are above the threshold value, which is incorrect. So you should move the bar upwards and bring down the percentage of the computation to somewhere between 30, 35, 40, right? Some lower level, because here the idea is not to worry about what is the percentage of attainment is, of the CO attainment is. Nobody is going to raise a point, and consider this to be as a poor attainment percentage, because that's not the goal of outcomes based education. The goal of the outcome based education is continuous improvement, and hence if you are achieving 25% attainment this year, after a couple of exams, which could be your formative assessments, and then if your remedial actions is moving the student performance related to CO1 from 25% to 28%, then that is what is desired actually. That is was most welcome than thinking about very high percentage of 80-85% and living in the false uh, idea of living with the false idea that bigger numbers means good performance of the student. It is not like that. It could be lower number, but continuous improvement is happening is what is the right idea here, and not living with the big numbers of CO attainments. That's not expected out of outcomes based education. And hence the threshold values could be fine tuned after immediately after a couple of your exams. And then if you believe that this is the right number that is being represented by the computations, then carry forward and do not change it for 3 to 4 years after that. So here, for the purpose of our computation here, I'm considering 60% as the threshold value. Now, as we go further, you will come across with three different values, and all will look same, and all are represented in percentages. And that's why these three numbers confuse many people. But these are, we can just take a uh, look at these numbers and think about it right now, right away, and then try to avoid those confusions. 60% here is the threshold value. It is to see whether the student is crossing that value, and then those who cross are counted separately. Those who are not crossing that bar are counted separately, and then we compute the CO attainment, right? It is as simple as that. The number that is product of this computation is also uh, represented in percentages. So that is a second number, which is a product of the computation of the CO attainment, is also another percent. And the third value that is considered to be here is the target value, target attainment. So 60% threshold, let's say, has given you 45% attainment, but the target attainment was 50%. So it shows you that there is a gap. But if you, let's say 60% is the threshold value, your product is product of this computation is 55%, your target was 50%, so you are ahead of the target. It is, these are the three numbers and that are to be considered for computation of CO attainment. Now let's look at the computation of CO1 attainment. We know that there are three questions mapped to CO1, and I'm just assuming, rather taking example of question one uh, having two maximum marks. Question two also has two maximum marks, and three has five maximum marks. So if I would apply the threshold value, and then it will give me the the product as threshold value as 1.2, 1.2, and 3 as the threshold value for uh, evaluating how many students are crossing 1.2 marks or 3 marks when I am evaluating the question number one, question number two, and question number three. At that time, I will consider these threshold values and see how many students are crossing that line and how many have not. That is the sole purpose of computing the threshold value. So this is the example of one of the question number one. We know that threshold is 60%, 1.2 marks, and that gives me a simple analysis. These bold letters represent students, and the row followed by that represents the marks scored by them. Those who are shown in green means that they are above this threshold line of 1.2 marks, and that's why those are counted separately by me here in this manner. And the remaining students are counted separately who are below this target line. And I am getting two numbers here. 26 students are above the threshold line out of 60, and that gives me 43% as the threshold value. Rather, I'm sorry, 43% as the CO attainment value of CO1 from question 1. So, so far we have computed the CO attainment only from question 1, and 43% is the attainment. It is as simple as that. Now, if we use the same technique and follow uh, the progress of the students with respect to other questions here, we will arrive at similar computations of attainment percentages. Here we saw how 43% is computed. Likewise, for question 2, the attainment was higher, 66%, and for question 3, it was lower, which is 50%. Now, once again, I use this higher and lower number with respect to this 43% and not to show that it is a poor or better performance. That's not the goal here. So just to represent how these threshold values are behaving and how the product of this computation is changing accordingly. So when you want to now compute the aggregated CO attainment, which is our next step in the computation, you have to sum the number of students who are above the threshold lines divided by the total number of the students in the classroom. And it gives us 53.3% as the CO attainment of CO1. I hope that this is clear to everybody. Now, the next question always is, what about denominator? Can we change it? Right? Is that the next question? Let's see. So the next question is about denominator, and the smart people will say that if the moment you remove the absent students and those who did not answer this question, I should reduce the denominator here. And why? Because reduced denominator will give you higher attainment. But is that the goal? The goal is not to worry about whether you get a better looking number or not. That is not the goal at all. The goal of outcome based education implementation is to drive the continuous improvement. How this 53.3% becomes 55% next time is the goal, and not to worry about 53 itself. So if you are not afraid of taking a stand of that, I am not worried about the lower number, I am more worried about continuous improvement, then you should not worry about the denominator. For the absent student, just forget about them. uh, the only time when the denominator has to be changed is when you are asking optional questions, and optional questions are answered by very few students, depending upon the choice that they want to make. And then based on the number of students who answered that question, you should choose the denominator. Because if an optional question is answered by only 5 students, and you have the 60 as the class strength, then naturally the computation will be incorrect. And to avoid this incorrectness in the computation, you should use the denominator as per the number of students who chose to answer that optional question. So that is the only time when denominator should change, but otherwise no. It should be constant every time. The next step is, I mean, it's the same. You for CO2 also you can do the similar computation. CO3 also you can do the same computation, and then finally, imagine that you have done it for CO4 and CO5 also. So you will come out with the computation which will look like this. So you have this course has 5 COs, and then you have these numbers now as your course attainment percentages, right? So I hope that this is clear now. And now the next step is looking at these attainment levels from the perspective of targets set by us, right? So that targets will give you a very different perspective, and why I will also share my thoughts about that. So here, because these targets help you in analyzing a few things. Imagine a situation. I'm going to paint a picture now, and then use this picture at the time of PO attainment analysis. But it may be a good idea to bring this up right now itself. Uh, the there are quite a few POs which are very important for you, uh, for the institute, because they are more inclined towards some of the skill specific, or some of the metacognitive attitude level POs are very important from the perspective of getting a job as a, let's say, as a developer or as a designer, or going for higher education in a premium institution. So certain POs are identified as critical, must be achieved by maximum students. And then what will happen is that maximum students is what? I mean, if there is a batch of 60 students, uh, they going out, then out of 60 students, how many students should achieve it? At least, I mean, but as I mentioned to you, the answer cannot be binary yes and no. So there may be some rubric or performance indicator associated with PO. And then based on this performance indicator, you may say that at least 75% students should achieve those desired POs, right? Based on the performance indicators that you are defining. So these 75% becomes the target, and hence this target is percolated down to all the courses and the corresponding course outcomes. They become hot areas, and the moment you see the drop in the percentages of the respective course outcome attainments, it is an indication to you that these important POs are not going to be achieved by this batch unless there is a remedial action planned and the performance is improved. So that is how that is why the targets are important. But the philosophy behind setting up targets should be like this, and not some random that okay, this time you achieved and next time you should achieve it. That is meaningless. It has to be considered as from the perspective of what important POs the student should achieve, and based on that, this target should be decided. So here in this case, for this course, 55% was the target. And based on that, I can now see that CO1 and CO2 are below the target level. So that's the first immediate indication we have received as a teacher. The next step is now to look at what happened, what caused these uh, attainments to go down. Now, if you look at the analysis here, it will immediately show you that question number 1 and 3 were below the target levels of 55%, and hence they come under radar. And then if you go back to your earlier analysis, immediately you will be able to spot the problems, and you can plan the remedial action. Now, if you look at This analysis also shows you very clearly the cognitive process dimensions. Those who scored are at the apply level. Those who are at 1.5 are at understand level. Those who are at 1, they are at remember level, and those who are 0, they are at no level. And then naturally, those who understand, those who could just remember, and those who even could not remember are the students who should be considered for the remedial actions. And this is how the cognitive process, considering the cognitive process all the time, will change the perspective of looking at the student performances, and that is what is desired when we implement outcomes based education. So now I am going to actually transfer the COs to the POs. And that's the third step involved in our main discussion today. We started with identifying, rather, we discussed how computation of the COs to be done, and then we did some analysis of why certain COs are below the target and why remedial actions are now to be planned. And now the third concept that we're going to discuss is transferring the CO attainment to the PO attainment. And right now it's 4:30, and we have another 30 minutes to go, and that this time is good enough for us to, the remaining time is good enough for us to finish the discussion today comprehensively, by even allowing a few questions to be addressed. So now I'm going to transfer this, CO attainment to the PO. Here is the way I am going to transfer it to all the POs, because every CO is mapped with all the POs of the, that we have identified. PO1, PO2, and PO4 are mapped with the course, and all the COs are mapped with all the POs. If you recall the course articulation metrics and the simple course articulation metrics, that is the reason I have to transfer this percentage of the CO attainment to all the POs which are connected with this respective CO. And that is what exactly I have done. I have transferred 53% as it is to all the POs. And now I will also, uh, I will also show you one more look way of PO attainment computation. So here in this case, there is another school of thought which says that when you transfer the CO attainment to the PO attainment, look at the weightage of the affinity level. So here in this case, the PO1 has substantial affinity with the CO1, and hence the level of 1 is, weight of 1 is considered here, and the percentage is transferred as it is. But when the affinity level between CO1 and PO2 is moderate, then the weight of 0.667 will come in picture, and then 53 will get multiplied by 0.67, and a fraction of that will go to PO2 accordingly. Likewise, the fraction of 53% will go to PO4, because the degree of affinity is 0.33 there. Um, so this is how the computation is done. Either you transfer the whole number without worrying about the affinity levels, or you transfer the numbers by multiplying it with the weight of the affinity level and pass on the percentage to the PO accordingly. I like this second approach, because it doesn't clutter the percentages, of the uh, when the affinity is not really great, again then the whole number is being transferred there, and which sometimes it gives you a false representation of um, the number of students achieving. I mean, it is about the importance of the PO attainment to be achieved from a course, and then if the whole number is transferred there, then unnecessary you get a different picture at the PO attainment level. When all the courses transfer their data to all the POs as and when the POs are computed, then it might not show you some specific hotspots if the whole numbers are transferred all the time. So probably That's the because of the analysis of PO attainments, I have this perspective generated, but you may have a different opinion and you may continue to follow what you think is the right way for you, which is helping you to identify the weaker students and take the remedial actions and then do the continuous improvement. As long as you are able to do this with the computation you are doing it, all the frameworks are correct. So I'm giving you another example here, in which I'm transferring CO3 attainment and then I'm arriving at second set of numbers here. And then likewise, all the COs from left hand side to right hand side should be transferred, and the POs will get five numbers here, each from five COs, and then averaging of these numbers should be done at the PO level to come out with the PO attainment. That is the idea here. So now pure attainment contribution from other courses, just like the way the attainment computation is happening with the help of from this example that we have taken, which represented one course only. We have to also look at other courses which are being delivered parallelly in the same term, and we have to see what is happening there. So this is the course that we discussed, in our example. There could be other course by conducted taught by other teacher, and some percentage is going to the program outcomes associated with this course. There could be another set of program outcomes addressed by another course, right? It can't be the same set of program outcomes. Otherwise, why would that course exist, right? The same, it has to be a different course and addressing different program outcomes, and that's the design of the program, right? We have seen the program articulation matrix, and based on that, these program outcomes are fulfilled by those respective courses, and the percentage of the attainment is passed to those respective program outcomes. In this case, there are four program outcomes mapped here, and there is another course in the same term in which also four program outcomes are being addressed by this course. So if you now zoom out a little bit, you will see that there are five courses and they all are mapped to various program outcomes, and these attainment percentage are being transferred to those respective program outcomes. So if you now look at it little differently, you will see that these are the program outcomes which are being addressed by those five courses, and PO1 has only one course mapped with it, PO2 has also one course, PO3 has two courses mapped to it, PO4 has four courses mapped to it, PO5 2, PO6 3, PO7 2, PO8 2. Now you tell me, it's very easy for you to identify which PO is important here. It is PO4. Why? Because the program designer thinks that to achieve PO4, there has to be at least four different courses addressing it. For PO6, there has to be three different courses addressing it, right? But PO1, PO2 is addressed only by one course. So compare the importance of PO1, PO2 versus PO4. Obviously, PO4 is important, considering the weightage given by the program designer to PO4. So why PO4 has so many courses mapped? Is it because it is it is more important for the students to achieve it because they will get a better job in the desired field of work, or will they get admission to a good premium institution later on for higher education, or it is important for entrepreneurship? What is important? Why it is so important? Is it a mistake or it is desired? And then if it is a mistake, then the program articulation matrix will help the program designer to solve this problem and then see why a PO4 is given such an important, and why there is lesser important given to PO1 and PO2. But it may be valid, right? And that is purposely done because PO4 is important. If it is important, then the attainment percentage of the PO4 should not be dropped. It should be maintained, and that's why targets are important. So I will say that in no case I will accept less than 65% attainment of PO4, and then naturally then 65% will be the target value set for all the COs of all these four courses, for course 1, course 2, course 3, course 4. The COs map to there will be some 5 to 10 COs of each course, right? And out of those 5 to 10 COs, maybe 3 to 4 course outcomes are mapped to PO4, and for such course outcomes, the target of those course outcomes should be 65%. Only then the overall percentage of PO4 will be achieved. Otherwise, it will not create any alert. The teachers will not get enough inputs from the system or the framework that is designed there to be alerted and take the necessary remedial actions if the system says that, or the program designer says that it is important to achieve PO4. So that is how actually targets are important. In advanced outcome-based education, implementers use different targets for different COs, and the reason is this. I hope that this is clear now. Now let's zoom out further and see what we see here. Here, just like the way we have seen 5 different courses running parallelly in one semester, if you consider the whole batch, 1620 batch, let's say, which is graduated out of the college now in May, June 2020, would have completed all the semesters, and all the courses are finished, and all the courses have contributed to attainment to the respective POs in this manner, right? So you have a complete analysis here for the whole batch, which shows you that there are certain 4 POs, 5 POs here below the target. And then remedial actions planned here would be important for to execute, because the reflection of that should be seen in the next academic batch. So here there is another batch which has completed 3 years. The 4th year is not completed yet, and this batch has completed 2 academic years. It is yet to finish remaining part of the education, but the percentage of the computation will start coming up here, because the courses are now have started contributing the attainments, and then these numbers are starting getting compared with the target. So you can see that the some of the attainment percentages have gone up, maybe because of the remedial actions planned there. Some of the program outcomes have shown some improvement, but still they are below the target level. Maybe this is a mistake here, it should be green. And here in this case also some improvement has happened, but it is still not crossing the target level. So there could be variations also being caused because of the new courses being introduced in a batch. The revisions are happening, so naturally this data will not be so stable. It will always vary. But if you ask how to analyze in such case, the statistical process control people will tell you that, okay, you calculate the lower control limit and higher control limit, and unless and until your variation in these percentages will well within this band, you're okay. If you are seeing some trends of you are moving upwards in your trend analysis, then naturally it's a cause of concern, and you should be able to then take some remedial action. So that's the way the statistical process control people will tell you how to look at this data and then come out with standard deviation, UCL, LCL, and then you continue your the analysis of the data of attainment. But that happens when you have enough data in the system, and you are able to actually use longitudinal analysis. Trend analysis is possible. For that, you have to at least have 3 to 4 batches data, otherwise it's not possible, right? So naturally, since those who are implementing outcome-based education recently, naturally they don't have so much of data in the system yet to come out with analysis very at the PO level, which will give you more insight than what you are able to see looking at the numbers only. Those who are going for NBA accreditation, for them this particular part is important. So this is converting the numbers of percentages to ones and twos and three by looking at the attainment levels here, and then you come out with a normalized number of 1, 2, and 3. And this is a rubric that is to be used for converting these percentages into 1, 2, and 3. This is called as attainment levels, and these attainment levels are calculated like this. In Inpods technology, these techniques are already implemented. Inpods is a software product, and then this is done automatically by the system. And then in this case, then you transfer these numbers, because you are computing the attainment levels before it is transferred to the POs, and then these numbers are then computed by multiplying those with the weightages as we had done in the past, and then the remainder will go to POs as a attainment contribution from this course to the POs. So finally, you will see a picture like this. This is Imports UI, and the computation is happening automatically, and then this attainment level is computed there, and which is transferred to the respective POs based on the degree of affinity. And finally, the weighted rather the weighted arithmetic mean formula is used to calculate the percentage of rather not percentage, the overall attainment of the POs in each semester. And this is how the computation is done. So now Imports also helps batch-wise analysis. The red bars means that there is a problem in those attainment levels of the POs. If you click, you will see the number of courses associated with it, and you can then find out the problem area very quickly. The system shows highlights that in a particular assignment there was a problem, and hence it was the reason for lower attainment. So Imports also gives you longitudinal analysis like this, batch wise, course wise history to various teachers and the deans and course coordinator. Based on the role they people play in the institute, the data is accessible to them from the system. So it's done very easily with the help of technique. I mean, the methodology which I explained you, the solutions are already in place. And the remedial actions are also then planned by the teachers according to the feedback received from the system. And all such remedial actions may be contributing to higher degree of affinity, higher degree of CO attainment, that is showing you the change in the percentage from earlier to the next, and that is what is captured here by the system and reported to various stakeholders in the institution. So this is the end of actually the presentation about the computation of COPO attainment and the remedial actions and how it should be planned by looking at the concepts that we discussed right from the day one. Some basic concepts of outcome-based education, some advanced level concepts of outcome-based education, and then using that knowledge in defining the outcome-based COPO attainment computation framework, and then arriving at attainment levels at every CO, every course, and every batch when it comes to PO attainment. So we looked at various techniques of transferring the CO attainment to the POs. We discussed about the attainment levels and then transferring the attainment levels to the POs. But the idea is the same there, that is to find out the uh, what PO is above the threshold line and what PO is not uh, above the threshold line. And that's the idea there when you transfer the PO attainment, CO attainment to the PO attainment. Uh, any questions? There is one question here. Let me see. Uh, Professor Gina, would you please rephrase your question? I'm unable to. I'm just checking whether there are any questions on YouTube. There are no, but now if you Professor, please rephrase your question. I did not get what the question is. I'll try to address that. So now the next is, um, preparing industry-ready graduates. And here the idea is that if you map the competency profiles given to you by the companies, uh, you can actually find out the relationship of these competencies that they're expecting with the courses and the course outcomes, and you come up with your own map of competency profiles and the course outcomes. And then if you are using this outcomes data to also see how many students are likely to achieve the desired level of competence as per the competency profile, it gives you a fair idea of how many students are likely to achieve that. You may get surprised that the aptitude or maybe the percentage of the marks scored by them in the last previous semesters may not be above the 60% threshold of first class. But some of these students who are actually struggling somewhere between 50 to 60% may be doing better in terms of some competency profiles, and if you expose them to the interviewers, they may perform better actually than those who are just filtered out based on the 60% threshold of marks. You will get surprised that some of the students who are not getting a chance because of this rule may actually perform better in those interviews, and might land into a job actually offered by them, because they're doing better than others in terms of the competency profile. And that's precisely the idea is here. Analyze it from the student performances and the competency profiles. The other idea that you can implement is giving an ability to the students to see what trajectory they are following. So if you have created these trajectories like this, then the students sitting here, they who are watching their performance progressively, if their dream job is this, but actually their journey is going towards this, then what course correction they should do is the idea to be given to them during your mentoring sessions. And if the mentoring is happening with the help of some data, it will be very effective. And that is the idea here. So students may have a different perspective about their performance, but in reality it is not so. And that is a uh, problem that you can fix during your mentoring sessions. So that is it from my end. And if you have any further questions about Inpods, as well as for outcomes based education generally, please feel free to connect with me. My contact details are here, and as well as we are already connected on the Telegram group. But those who have not joined so far the Telegram group can note this down, and please feel free to connect with me anytime in the future for any question about outcomes based education. I highly appreciate your time and your participation in last 3 days in this FDP. And I also have learned a lot from the number of questions that were asked by you all. Those were also helping me to understand what gaps are in my knowledge, and that I continue to refine that and learn more and more things about outcome based education. I would like to once again refer the idea of Imports Faculty Commons, and please, I would urge and request you that use these ideas, these models in your day-to-day work. Try to do something very a small step also is good enough. And then if you are finding any significant improvement in something, student performances especially, please create a video and show us the what exactly you did, due to which you found some changes. And if you could share that with us on Infoarts Faculty Commons, the all the educators in India will be benefited. So I appreciate those who appreciated wholeheartedly the presentations, and I thank you very much for your feedback to me. And as I mentioned to you, each such interaction with educators helps me also learn a lot. Thank you so much. Unless there are any other questions, I will now conclude this session. There's one question from a professor. Is OBE possible in higher education without reforms in school education? It is. It is not possible if, however, the outcome-based education is implemented in the syllabus at least 15-20 years ago by CBSE. If you open any book, textbook of K-12, primary or secondary education, you'll always find that learning objectives are defined there very clearly. It's only the problem of implementation in India, and when the things are not implemented, you cannot expect the outcomes, obviously. But the senior educators, the education researchers in India have already thought about these long back, and the reflections of their actions are visible in the curriculum design of primary and secondary education. The problem is that if these things are not taken seriously, then implementation will be far away, and then naturally you will feel that how can uh, OB is not implemented, reforms are not happening in primary secondary education, and how it will be visible then in the higher education, obviously. So this particular link was planned to be fixed since long, but unless and until we start somewhere, the problems are not going to vanish. And that is the very reason for which I am trying to do as much as possible by spending time and efforts in delivering these free programs of FDP to share the knowledge and the ideas that we have come across with. We have seen how these things might work, might not work, and then we are trying to just create the awareness as much as possible. And that's why thousands of teachers so far have attended these FDP programs, which I'm conducting since last 6 to 7 months. And I'm very glad that already more than 35,000 teachers have attended these FDPs and webinars conducted by Inpods in last 6 to 7 months. And that has given me immense pleasure, and also satisfaction that I could contribute something here in the for the field of higher education in India. And also, as I mentioned, many other countries, neighboring countries, and Middle East and African countries had uh, in participating, regularly in these FDP programs. So that is also that is also a moral boosting and motivation for me to continue this activity. So I thank you so much, and I wish you all happy Diwali, happy festival days, and I hope to keep interactions with all of you through our YouTube channel, Inpods Faculty Commons. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care.